Hello, welcome to the National Literacy Agency online storytelling program. Għidli Storja, tell me a story. Today I would like to share with you a story that my mother used to tell me when I was very young. I loved the story. It was about a family that lived in a cottage in the woods. I used to tell my mother, "Can you tell me the story again? Can you tell me the story again?" And I wanted to listen to the same story so often because I loved it so much. There are many versions to this story, but of course I will only tell you the one that my mother used to tell me. So it is story time. You look and you listen. Well done. The title of this story is The Family in the Woods. Once upon a time, there was a family that lived in a cottage in the woods. It was only the dad and his daughter who lived in the cottage. Dad was a woodcutter. He was a very strong man, and he worked very hard. He made logs, and he used to take the logs to the market and sell the logs. Well, his daughter grew up, and she got married, and she had a beautiful daughter. She grew up to be a very good-hearted girl, and she loved her granddad so much. Her dad became a woodcutter too. So granddad and her father went out to chop woods, chop trees, chop the wood, make logs, and go out to market. Go to sell all the logs at the market. Business was very good then, but things change. Times change. And there was this timber factory that was built very close to where they lived. There were less trees to chop, and they had to walk a very, very long way from the cottage to chop trees and make logs. Well, the factory, they took the logs to the market too, and people bought a lot of logs because it came cheaper. When the logs were sold from the timber factory, they came cheaper. So they were very hard times for the old man and his son-in-law. Still, the ball was rolling, and they were still selling some of the logs. But it happened that the old man was now sick. He had arthritis. All his joints hurt. His hands, his legs, his back. He could hardly walk, let alone go out and walk to chop trees down. He couldn't do the work anymore. So it was the father who was working all alone. Unfortunately, there was very, very little wood to sell, and money was scarce. But his wife was a very good wife. She was very good with her hands. She was very good with needles, and she could knit, 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 and nothing went to waste. if her daughter had clothes, woolen clothes, that she grew out of, she used to put them aside. If her husband, her father, had shirts and trousers that were torn, she never threw anything away. She used to snip, 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 and sew the things together. And she made a beautiful shawl. It was very long. And as her sick father was in his armchair, she put the shawl around him. She put it on his shoulder, and she wrapped it twice around his shoulder, so it would keep him very warm. One day, Dad came in. He was very angry. He sold very little logs, and he found the same soup he always found every day. Little soup, little soup, little soup. And he just banged on the table. "No more little soup," he told his wife. And his wife told him, "I'm very sorry, my dear, but you do know that money is very scarce, and this is the best that we can do." And he walked up to the old man and he said, "We used to work together, and that worked very fine. But today you are sitting there in that armchair, all wrapped up in the shawl that my wife has made you, keeping yourself warm, while I have to do double the work, which I can't do. There's very little money going around, so I suggest that you leave the house." The old man was very sad. His head just went down and tears fell on his lap. And the wife, she was open-mouthed. The granddaughter, she looked at her father. "Dad, how could you?" But Dad was angry, and he just walked into another room. The next day, Dad woke up very early and he went out to the woods. Again, there was very little wood that he could chop, very little logs that he could take to the market. So he went back home. It was quite late, and he went to the old man, and he said, "What I told you still stands, you know. It's time for you to move out of this house. Go. You need to go right away. Tonight even though it's dark." And the old man was all ready to try and get up out of his armchair. And his wife said, "You can't do that to my father." He said, "Just watch this." And his daughter said, "Dad, you can't send Grandad outside. It's raining, it's snowing, it's dark." "Oh yes, I can. You go and bring Grandad his shawl. That will keep him warm." And so she did. She got the shawl. She opened it, put it on the floor. It was very, very long. And she took a pair of scissors. And she went snip, 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 snip right in the middle. And there was half the shawl on one side and half the shawl on the other side. And her dad looked at her and he said, "What are you doing? What have you done?" And she said, "Well, Dad, if you want to send Dad away, Granddad away, because we can't all eat, there's not enough money, I'm going to give him half the shawl. And I'm leaving the other half for you, Dad. For when your joints are all in pain with arthritis, for when you are old and when you can hardly walk, and when you stop working and you're not bringing money home, I will leave the half of the shawl for when you grow old. So I will send you out of the house for you to find an old people's home and take half the shawl with you." What a lesson. Her dad was so ashamed of himself. And he stopped Grandad. "Stop, Grandad. Go back to your chair. Go back to your chair." And he took the two halves of the shawl and he wrapped Grandad in those two halves of shawls. "I am sorry. I am really sorry. Will you ever forgive me?" And Grandad cried, but he said he would. He would. And he only did that because his daughter gave him a good scolding and a lesson at the same time. Well, they never really went hungry because, as we said, her mother was very good at needles, knit, knit, knit. And she was knitting things. And with the little wood that they sold at the market, she was even selling baby clothes made of wool. And yes, the ball was rolling and food was still coming. They didn't eat a turkey every day, but they surely didn't eat nattle soup every day. And that is the end of our story today. I do hope that you have enjoyed it. And I want you to tell the story to your friends. As I said, stories may change. They travel and travel. As they travel, they change, but they will still remain stories. Bye-bye for now.